And here we are.
Hey,
A
here
big,
we are.
a big hearty welcome to DJ Corchin.
Thank
What
you.
a pleasure to have you on the show and to
It's a pleasure to
celebrate.
be on. Yeah, I'm excited. I've watched your segments and I was like, I would love to connect with Mel. That'd be great.
Don't get too excited. I,
Okay, I'll keep
I,
my expectations low then.
we had somebody who ate the program in the middle of it. Anyway, so DJ, may I call you DJ?
Yeah.
I before I get too excited about you, I have to mention who I am. So I am Mel Rosenberg, and I am the what am I? The host. See, I'm getting too excited now. The host of the Children's Literature channel of the New Books Network, and I'm here with you to celebrate your brand new book, which launches in about 3 or 4 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I asked you, would you be on the show? And you said yes, yes, a million yeses.
A million.
What's the name of your book, DJ?
Well, it just so happens it is a million yeses. Yeah, look at that.
Incredible, incredible.
What a coincidence.
A few words about your book, and then we're going to dive into your polymathic career and have a lot of fun.
Yeah, right on for sure. Yeah, so the book is a follow-up to one of my other previous books, which I have right here is called A Thousand No's. And we can share more about that later. But A Million Yeses is really about a topic that I find is super important to learn at an early age. But even some adults come up to me and be like, I need this now. I didn't get it, which is all about setting healthy boundaries and still being able to kind of keep good relationships. I think that's something that we get asked to do a lot of ourselves. But when you're talking about being on an airplane and the oxygen masks come down, they say put it on first so that you can help others. And that's a great metaphor for kind of what this book is about.
Yeah, and it's like the ancient adage of Rabbi Hillel, who said, "Im enani li mili." If I'm not for myself, then who am I for?
There you go.
וכשאני לעצמי, מי אני? When I'm only for myself, who am I?
Yeah.
And if not, לא עכשיו, if not now, then when?
Yeah. I think all of that applies. One of the things that it comes to mind is there's a lot of discussion around the old Silverstein book, The Giving Tree. And there's people on both sides of an argument where they feel like they get it's their favorite book in the world, and a lot of people are like, well, the message, I don't like the message. And I personally love the message of unconditional love that they're trying to portray there. However, I do think there's room for growth in that message to talk about how you can actually care for somebody in a longer term capacity by making sure that you take care of yourself. So it's kind of a good balance for that type of book. In fact, I actually think it's a great book to read along with it. So if you have, the Giving Tree on one hand, you can have a great discussion, and then A Million Yeses on another, and you can have another discussion about, what it looks like in context of your life and with your friends. And I talk to my kids about, this lesson all the time because they want to make everybody happy. Kids they don't like conflict. They want, which conflict is good, but they still want people to feel happy. And so sometimes they'll do things that they don't feel comfortable doing, and they should feel comfortable setting boundaries is really what it should be.
Yeah. So without giving it too much away, this book is about yes, 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 until there's no more yeses.
Yeah. So what's funny is if you were to actually look at it on the macro scale, A Thousand No's is actually about learning to say yes, and A Million Yeses is all about learning to say no. But there's a particular page in the book that right kind of before the climax of the book where it shows.
DJ, you're gonna have to interview me if you go on behaving like this, because that's my question. Show us a page in the book.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, so one of the pages in the book that I think is really great that's off the climax. So the climax really gets to the point where there's nothing left and the person doesn't feel like themselves again. But then when they start to set boundaries, one of the pages is the others noticed that she was getting her yeses back again, and it's the first time that she confidently says no. And the following page, I'm sorry, a little later, it talks about some of them actually stormed off and they were angry that she wouldn't get them a yes. And you know what? That might happen. It's very realistic. Like some people might feel that resistance is like, okay, well, then I don't want anything to do with you. But then the book continues on around, well, the people that stayed, we all got to work and found yeses for each other. We helped each other and did and worked together. So the artwork, speaking of that, Mel, like the artwork is incredible by Dan Dougherty. He hand drew every yes on every page. In fact, some of my kids actually drew a yes, and or I only have two kids. Both my kids drew a yes, and his kids drew a yes, and he actually recreated them in the book, so their drawings are in there. So it's a beautiful message with a beautiful set of illustrations in a fantastical world that Dan created.
Yes. So Dan, he lives in the same town. You know each other.
Yeah,
You're also an illustrator, and yet he illustrated, and you
yeah,
didn't illustrate. What's going
yeah.
on?
What is happening, right? Sometimes I wonder. So Dan and I met when I self-published my first book like 20 years ago, and we met on Craigslist. And back then, that's when we would and we always joke about that. But I posted an ad, after kind of doing some research, and out of 100 submissions I got, he was the one that I picked, and we ended up being great friends. And so he's a good friend of mine now. But he illustrates a lot of the books where I say, when they got to bring the big guns in. Like I can illustrate a certain style, something that fits for me, but he is a very prolific and talented illustrator, and so sometimes I'll illustrate a book, sometimes he'll illustrate a book for me. He does a lot of other work in the comic world as well, so really, really talented guy. But I don't have the ego where I have to, do everything. And I think we all play to our strengths, and if it's not the right fit for me to illustrate, then we'll find the right person that it is.
That's fantastic. Now let's go back to your story. I mean, talk about polymath. You ride these, what do you call them, unicycles, play a million musical instruments. What else do you do? I mean, I thought I did a lot of things. Have you ever been an assistant beekeeper?
No,
Oh,
but
so I
I'll
just have one thing that I've done that you haven't done.
yeah, an assistant beekeeper. Yeah, I will. I'll have to put that on my list.
I'm going to write a story about that. We'll see where it takes me.
Yeah, you should save the bees, all that fun
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah,
No, the bees said no.
the bee said no. That's right. A million bees. Yeah, there you
So
go.
how many things have you been in your life?
Mel, that's a great question, and it's a deeper question than just kind of off the cuff. And let me tell you why. I actually, one of the things that I speak to when I speak to like author visits for elementary schools in particular, I show pictures of me riding a unicycle, playing a trombone, because that's how I made a living for a while, in a show. And I show a picture of me being a high school band director as a teacher, playing different instruments. And then I show a picture of me being an author. I even show a picture of me at my desk doing corporate communications for like, as part of my other career. And I show them up there, and I say I was this and I'm this and I'm this. I don't say I'm this, then I'm this, then I'm this, because it's important that kids learn that not only can you be more than one thing, but you should be more than one thing. And it's important. Like your teacher's not just your teacher. They might be a dancer. They might be a rock climber. They might, be a secret woodworker. Who knows? Like I'm super into fountain pens. I never thought that was ever going to
Yeah.
happen. You know? So, that message is particularly strong, that once you do something, it doesn't necessarily mean it goes away. Like I'll always be a teacher. I think that's always brought into me. And I encourage kids to I actually have a manuscript actually that's called More, and it's all about being more than one thing. So I challenge them whenever somebody says, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" to never ever say one thing, to always say three things. So yeah, I have been a lot. I like to explore creative avenues. I like the arts, obviously. Um, but that's all about just exploring the world and ways that we can contribute to the world positively. And I've kind of landed in a good place around that. I think this is where I want to do that with starting the conversation around really complex topics for children.
And then finding a brilliant way to make the concept appear simple when it isn't.
Isn't that the challenge? Yeah, that's the
It
yeah,
sure is. So
yeah.
so now I always take my guests back to early childhood.
Oh wow. All
You
right.
weren't always a DJ.
No, I was not.
You were once David Jeremy.
I
Did
was.
you grow up in the Chicago area?
I do. I grew up in Wheeling, Illinois, a northwest suburb, and then I moved to the city for college. I went to DePaul University and
Mhm.
got my degree in music education.
Well, no,
Uh,
no, wait, you're getting way ahead of me here.
oh, sorry.
I'm more interested in kindergarten than college education.
All right.
Tell me about the 4 or 5 year old, David.
The 4 or 5 year old David.
I mean,
Um,
because if you've seen my show, I think the people like us who write for the young children have a very strong inner child. That's my thinking.
I agree. I don't know if I would have thought that when I was younger. I think I was very forward focused about what I wanted to do and grow up. We didn't grow up with a lot of money, and so being stable was a huge focus of mine. And so I did enjoy playing and exploring the world that way. But I think like a lot of people, we have our stories, and I think there was a lot of personal strife that you grow up that kind of hardens you a little bit. And I spent uh, I do have an inner child, but I don't think it's the same way that I think you're meaning. I think it's more about trying to connect to that inner child, and what are the tools that I would have needed back then that I didn't have then. We talk a lot more about things like anxiety and depression and all of that. And when I was a child, it just wasn't spoken of. It wasn't talked about. It was just,
Mhm.
pull it together, walk it off, that kind of stuff. And so,
Yeah,
um,
DJ, one second, I can't let you off so easily. We write to our anxieties and our angsts and our pains and our yeses and our nos.
we
So a
do.
few words about your difficulties, your strife, because you are a hugely successful adult.
Thank you.
Um,
Yeah.
what is your nana banana
What's
to
where's
the world?
where's the pain come from? Yeah, I think I came from a divorced home. Both parents struggled financially. I think that was a big piece. The support structure of my grandparents, they all died early.
Sorry.
Uh, so there wasn't a ton of structure behind that. I think I had to kind of learn to be on my own a little bit sooner than I would have liked, just more like mentally and emotionally than anything. And it really drove me to what it built was grit. What it built was grit. And I think that is a huge um, tool to have in the publishing industry. When you say I'm a successful adult, um, you you have to work through all the obstacles that are in your way. That what you can't call them obstacles, but you could just call it life too. It's just like it's not specific to you. That everybody has obstacles and there's all these problems and whatnot. So I think that's what it taught me to kind of go through that. I think it was difficult um, seeing kids with like more money than I did, and not kind of feeling a little out of place and whatnot. But I'm grateful for the opportunities that I did have, and it really taught me to take advantage of those when I could, and not be afraid to reach out and talk to people and just say like, hey, somebody wrote a book, why can't I? And not necessarily trying to see myself as different from the rest of the human race, but as part of it. I don't know if that's too grandiose, but that's kind of a bigger feel that I have.
Well, this is like a whole, we'll have to talk a few times, because I think that we're all different, but there are kids who can behave as if they are more normative than other kids. I was a kid, I knew from the age of 5 that I was never going to be one of the other kids.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that is, well, like you talk about grit. I mean, it teaches you a few things. When you're 5, you know that you're going to spend your life as an outsider, even when you're an insider. But let's now segue to your interest in music. Was this something that you developed, or somebody forced you to study the French horn?
So, so my So my mother was always really musical, and I was interested in band and orchestra in elementary school. I just really loved,
Wow.
yeah, playing instruments and learning an instrument. So I had to choose my first instrument, I think in fourth grade or fifth grade, and I wanted something that was fun and loud, but I didn't want something as big as a tuba to play, to carry around because I wasn't about doing all that. So I picked the trombone and I learned the trombone. And band became an experience for me. Band is where I really felt like I belonged. Uh, in elementary school, I started in band, but I also played baseball. I was a dancer, so I did a lot of different things. But band is where I felt the most at home. There's a culture about band. I have some band books that I write about,
Yeah.
and there's a culture in
You're
there.
you're a nerdy gurdy or
Oh yeah,
nerdy gurdy.
I'm all the types of nerd. I got a lightsaber back there. I'm a Star Trek fan, like all that fun stuff. But yeah, and that culture in band really helped me get through my adolescence. And so there's not only my love of music, but I really loved the love of that culture, and which is why I wanted to become a band director to help that for other students and other kids. And so I just, I was very fortunate to have a great, band director back teacher and so obviously, when you have a mentor like that, you want to copy them and that's the direction I went.
Let's say, what's the name of your mentor? I'm a big fan of naming mentors, giving
Yeah,
them
so
credit.
I have three teachers that really made a big impact in my life. The band director, his name was Brian Logan. My English teacher, which is Mike Hurley, and my dance teacher was Diane Rollinson. And so they really encouraged me to explore and allowed me to fail forward. And that was my favorite part about it. They're like, "Yeah, try it." I mean, they probably knew that it wasn't going to work or whatever, but they gave me the space.
Unicycle. So far, you're not you're breaking quite a few molds here.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's not something you do on a random Tuesday? Just ride the unicycle, play the trombone? It's not.
Yeah, my parents couldn't afford a bicycle with two wheels, only
Yeah.
one wheel.
Yeah, so they went with the one. Um, Surprisingly, that was because I wanted a bigger paycheck. So when you do what you can. So when I auditioned for a show that was a Broadway show called Blast, which is like a marching band on stage, and it was great. It won a Tony and an Emmy and all that fun stuff. And one of the roles in there, the original guy that did it, he played the trombone and rode the unicycle. When he left the cast, nobody could do it. And so I got into the cast, and there wasn't a unicycle in the show for a while. And I was like, this is silly. And if you do the bit, so they rewrote it out of it because nobody could do it. So the first 6 months of my tenure, there was no part. And I was like, you know what? I can do this. So I bought a unicycle. One of the things that
How old were you?
uh 20s, young 20, yeah, like 20 years old.
Phew, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
You bought the unicycle.
I bought the unicycle. One of the lessons that I've always learned is to always, be nice and take care of the behind the scenes crew of any type of show. And so I got to be good friends with them. So I was like, "Hey, can you sneak this on the truck until whatever city we're in?" And so they did. And so I would take it and I'd practice, and then I said, "Hey, I want to write this back into the show," and I made a videotape and sent it to the producers. And so they flew back in and we rewrote the show real quick, and then I got to do it in cities all across the world, and it was they had to take out a special my understanding is they had to take out a special insurance policy on me because of the risk, but no risk, no reward, I guess.
That's fantastic. I thought this was something you took up when you were seven to show the other kids you were special. You did this in your 20s.
Yeah, no, I just decided I wanted to do it. It didn't come as easy to me as some of the other people did, but enough practice, I made it happen.
Fantastic. And so you didn't end up pursuing a career in music. And I would figure that you went to college and you studied music education, you play all these instruments and you lead a band. It's a dream to lead a band, even a children's band. And I'm going to say this is going to sound very bad. You abandoned the band. Oy vey, bad
Yeah.
Melvin. Um, and became a popular children's writer. How did that happen?
Um, well, that hits a note because no pun intended.
Right, right.
Because yeah, because I do miss it a lot. I got a job after the show as a high school band director. So I did teach in public high school for a while. And being a high school band director in the marching band world and all that, it's more than just a 9 to 5 or even an 8 to 3, whatever it was. It's weekends, it's all of that. And I heard I picked up what people were putting down when they were like, "Oh, I wish I would have gone to try to do this when I was your age, and I wish I would have done to do this to do your age." And when you get in there and you start doing it, you have an obligation to these kids. And I felt at some point like I just couldn't give my whole self to them, and that wasn't fair to them. And so that's why I left. I had a great experience. I loved it. I actually still. I mean, it's crazy. My students have kids now too, so I've run into them and I've hit that stage in my life. So it's really fun, and they're kind and generous in saying that they remember me, even though they only had me for like a year or two. And so it was more of a where can I make a bigger impact by taking care of myself, to be honest with you. Like, teaching is a hard job. It is I think money was also a factor, if I'm being just flat out honest. Going into the corporate world, I make way more money than I ever would as a teacher.
Mhm.
And that, as we talked about my childhood, like that is important to me, that kind of stability. And so, I just made a decision early in life to change directions, and that's okay. Like I think that's not only okay, but it should be encouraged. If it's, I hate to, feel like I was trapped in a role after a while, especially when it involves kids, because they don't deserve that. They deserve somebody that's really focused on them 100% of the time.
Great. And so you keep on not keeping on. So what prompted you to, I mean, not that I'm different. What prompted you to get into the corporate world, Apple and writing and then
Yeah.
segue to children's books?
Well, I wrote my first book when I was on tour. It was a poem book about band. My grandmother went to high school with Shel Silverstein, and so I grew up with all his poems and all that stuff. I have her yearbook with his signature in it. It's very cool. So that always connected with me. So I wrote a series of books, poems about band in the Shel Silverstein style, and I wrote that while I was on tour. And when I got off tour, I got or sorry, when I left teaching, um, I got a part-time job at an Apple store. I was maybe 22 or something like that, because I wanted to find a job that I could write as well. What happened was, back then, this was before iPhone, before all that stuff. I fell in love with the culture. Like, it was just really fun. I learned so much more about working with other adults than I ever would have as a teacher, to be
One
frank.
second, what were they selling before iPhones? Apples?
iPods,
Apples?
iPods and computers. Yeah, it was to me, it was a glorious time. People would come in and they're like, "What is this Apple thing?" And yeah, and back when launches were launches, back in my Apple day, and uh, I learned a lot professionally, just how to lead people, how to lead adults more than kids. And I just really liked it. I was being trained really well, and so I did the ranks through that, and ended up helping run some of the stores, and then eventually did in some corporate stuff and project and corporate management, and that's how it kind of took off. And now I do corporate communications for a large manufacturer. So
So you have a day job in addition to everything?
I do, yeah, I do, um, the important part about that is, when I was in the retail stores, I tell this story often. I met John Hughes, the writer producer, and him and I I kind of became his like guy he talked to when he came into the store. And he asked me, DJ, what do you want to be when assuming I didn't want to work retail my whole life. And I said, well, I want to be a writer. And he said, well, have you written anything? And I said, well, yeah. And he goes, then you're a writer. And it was right then that I realized that I didn't need permission to do anything. And so I just went and dove right into picture books, because I love, to your point, what you made earlier, like it's, the challenge to be able to say something very important that's universal in a very powerful way with as little words as possible, is a great challenge, and it allows the reader to input their own context into it, which is why I recommend picture books for adults all the time. Like, read picture books, you will get great wisdom. There's just beautiful wisdom in there, and you'll be able to connect the dots yourself in your life and what it means to you in your life. So that's how I got started, and I did it, and then dove into the self-publishing world, which back then was way different. So
So I should say, I should come clean and say that we have the same agents,
yes,
um, Liza Fleissig and Ginger Harris,
yeah.
and that's how we met yesterday. So so tell me how you started self-publishing and met your agents and broke in,
Yeah.
and then now you have about 20 books.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, Mel, rules are rules until they're not rules. And so my path to traditional publishing was very non-traditional. So I just decided to dive in. Back then, 20, 25 years ago, self-publishing had a bit of a stigma on it. But all I know is that I decided to list what was important to me. And at the time, what was important to me was to have a book. And I was like, I can do this. I can learn about this. I can go online and I can figure this out. And there were a few self-publishers, publishing on demand companies. And I went with, I think they're still around, lulu.com. And the thing about lulu.com is they were new and there was a lot of problems that happened. And because of that, and because they were new, my situations would kind of get escalated up to the point where I was talking to the people that were kind of like the decision makers. And I took that opportunity to learn as much as I can. And I was like, why, I'm not sure I needed them at that point. And so I went right to, I don't need a middleman. And I learned about ISBNs. I learned about, printing and all the business aspects of it, contracts, all that fun stuff. And so um, I decided to kind of like figure all that stuff on my own and start my own imprint around that. And quality of printing was very important to me. Learning how to make a good book that physically feels good, and is printed well and all that fun stuff. So I learned through kind of a lot of trial and error. So, and that's when people say, well, how do I get started with that? First thing I say is go online. Like, all the answers to your questions are online. And then once you go through that journey, then I think is the best time to start reaching out to others and start saying, hey, I've read this stuff. Now here's how I want to apply it to me. What's your advice on that? The answers are already out there. Learn from everybody else's mistakes and journey over the past 20 years. So that's how I got started. I ended up self-publishing a whole bunch. And I felt good about it. I was, making a little bit of money. I was able to get my books out, to stores and all of that, which is a big jump.
You were selling hundreds of books or thousands?
I was selling thousands. At my peak self-publishing, I was definitely selling thousands. I was making a little bit of money.
DJ, let me stop you here
Yeah.
because I self-published for years and I see it as a mistake. If you ever interview me, I'm going to come down on the other side for the same reasons. Because in order to self-publish successfully, you have to be able to be your own copy editor and to pick the right illustrators and the right paper and binding and format, and then figure out how you're going to market it. And these are all different professions.
They
And
are.
unless you want to wear all these hats, which I'm assuming that you certainly do, because the more hats, the merrier. Um, it's essentially a mistake. I have never or hardly ever seen a self-published book that doesn't have some problem with it because at some stage in the process, something was wanting in one of these professions. And I'm talking about basically mostly my own work. When the books were nice, but there was too much text because I didn't listen to the editor, because I was paying for it, and so on. So I would say don't self-publish unless you're prepared to be DJ and become a professional in all these different areas.
Hmm. Yeah. I, I don't think we disagree. I I don't know. So the other caveat I would add though is that if you do want to do the work and put on those hats, then I don't think it's a mistake. Because I think it makes you a better partner to a traditional publisher, knowing knowing the difficulty level of it. To your point, right? Like what font to pick, what,
Oh,
you know, all
I
of that
could
stuff.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, part of my education was being a lousy self-publisher, and
Sure.
I invite you to Israel. I have a garage full of mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah. And but I think the more and more I've done it though, the more I've learned from those mistakes. So I do think that my books stuck out. And the reason I found a traditional publisher was the exact reason you just said, is that my books were founded, and the first question they asked when I was discovered at a Comic-Con was, "Are these self-published?" And they were impressed with that and with the level of what I was able to do that. Yes, my first book, not a fan of how it looked, not a fan. And I would even challenge Mel that like even after a book is traditionally published, there's still things left wanting. Like I mean, experts are humans too, and so things happen and there's different decisions. But at some point when if we talk about A Thousand No's, I'll tell you about my journey with Sourcebooks around how they wanted to change some things up, and then when you go to a traditional publisher, you're not in control, and so those are things you have. Those are the risks versus the rewards of all of that stuff. And to your point, listening to those experts makes things better, 100%. But I enjoyed the hustle. I enjoyed the education and learning about it, and I feel to your point, I feel like I did it differently than most self-published children's books authors.
Listen, DJ, this makes me really happy. I mean, I don't mind being wrong.
Oh,
But you're a case of somebody who's taken on this challenge and said, okay, I'm going to learn to do all of this professionally.
yeah.
And for me, the marketing, or I say, marketing a book. I read somewhere that the average number of self-published books that get sold is less than 100. And I can believe that because if you don't know how to hustle and sell the books,
Yeah.
here in Israel, nobody's going to distribute your book in stores.
Right.
Um, so anyway, let's get back to you. So what are you were at Comic-Con selling your self-published books, and somebody who source books comes up to you.
Yeah.
This is
So
crazy. This is
it's a
insane.
crazy story.
No,
It's
but
it's
try and tell the true story, DJ.
okay. So here's the true story. So I was chugging along with self-published books. I had at that point about 20-ish, 24 self-published books. Loved it, was making some money, doing the hustle. And I went to a lot of shows. And because of my relationship with Dan, I kind of got into Comic Cons and selling my artwork, and that's how I learned to illustrate and all that. So
Okay.
we were at a really big um, comic convention in Chicago. It's called C2E2, and I still go to it every year. And I had an artist alley table, and I had to go to the bathroom so bad, Mel. And the thing is about these tables is that you generally don't have somebody to watch your table when you go to the bathroom. So if somebody walks by, you miss a sale. So I'm sitting there, I'm like trying to find the best time to go to the bathroom and leave my table, and I'm about to leave when I see this woman like across the way, kind of looking at my table like she might be interested. And I was like, all right, I'll stay around. We'll see what happens. That is a life-changing pivotal decision right there, because she comes over and the way you could tell the way she was looking at the book, she was looking at the binding, she was looking at the copyright page, she was looking at this thing just in a really interesting way, because people come up to you all the time at book shows and say, I want to write a children's books, or hey, you should do this, and you're like, yeah, I get it. But there was something about the way she was doing it, and she's like, hey, listen, I used to work for this company called Sourcebooks. I now work for a large wholesale distributor, but the CEO there, I think she would really love these books. And she goes, you self-publish these? And I go, yeah. She goes, these are really good. And I go, well, thank you. Like that, I was like, this is awesome. She kind of knows the business. She's like, send them to Dominique, who's the CEO at Sourcebooks, and tell her I sent you. And I was like, okay, great. I didn't think anything of it because again, like people come up through the tables. And then after the show, I was really thinking about it, and I was like, what the heck? It's not gonna hurt. So I literally sent my whole books to her, and I said, hey, I talked to this person, would love to, see what you think. She recommended doing that. She's like, awesome. Long story short, 2 weeks later, I had a life-changing contract. And so I call that, and that happened a few years ago. So I call that my 15-year overnight success, because in those 30 seconds that I was able to converse with her, that I didn't choose to go to the bathroom, which if that, I mean, the odds are you and I wouldn't be sitting here today, Mel, if I did. And then I was able to speak kind of
Like,
intelligently.
DJ, just think of how many things I missed in my life because I did go to the bathroom.
Exactly, right? Like how far much how many more books I would have sold. Yeah.
Well, you snooze, you lose. You pee, you I don't know.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know either. I haven't done any a lot of rhyming books lately. But yeah, and but my point is that those 15 years of hard work allowed me to have that 30-second, 1-minute conversation in such an intelligent, professional manner that she understood I knew what I was talking about. So that she felt comfortable allowing me to drop her name essentially. And I thank her all the time for it. Like every time I see her, I always say thank you for it because it changed the trajectory of my writing career. So
So
that is where
Source Books
yeah,
ended up buying
all of them.
all of your books.
Yeah.
This happens sometimes when people pass, and you because you didn't urinate,
Yeah.
you didn't hesitate. Okay. Anyway,
Yeah.
we'll move on. So, but your all of your oeuvre of all your books, and you became in one fell swoop a traditionally published author.
Yeah.
And
Um
your biggest success is the Thousand No's.
yeah, the biggest success is A Thousand No's. That was the book that Sourcebooks led with when they kind of republished they basically republished where we redid 3 books entirely and then they kind of re-released all the rest of mine. Um it was in Barnes and Noble everywhere. I mean, it was a very surreal moment. I mean, I have pictures of it being the only book in Barnes and Noble's window. I still, it's still on shelves years later. The only caveat is that they released it at a very um term a time full of a lot of turmoil. It was right in the middle of the lockdown and COVID. So even though there were books in bookstores, nobody was going anywhere. It was about 6 or 7 months after George Floyd, and so there was a tremendous amount of focus, and in my opinion, rightfully so, around social injustice and all of that. And so it was just a weird time to be launching your premiere book from a major publisher, and so it did well, but not quite as well as like what we would always hope to. And I was grateful that they continued to release other books, and we still have a great relationship. And if we I send stuff to the editor there, and that if we have if there's something that fits with their library, then they're open to it. So we have a great open relationship, which is really fun.
Let's segue to your new book, which is coming out in 3 days. This is your own publishing house.
Yeah, yeah.
Two
So
words about your own publishing house.
well, I created it for 2 reasons. Um, One is because I there are some creative control that sometimes you just want, and the book is not a fit for somebody, or they just can't. I can't get across the vision that I want to yet. They're not bought into it. Publishers sometimes only take 3 or 4 books a year, and you're just not it. And so it might be 10 years till you can get this book out, and I just don't have that kind of patience for that kind of stuff. And so I wanted an avenue to be able to release things if it's the right fit and the right way to do it. There are 2 books that I've kind of featured as a release of my own one. One is this new A Million Yeses, and it's absolutely riding the coattails of the success of A Thousand No's. And but because of that, I'm able to kind of get a little bit of more of a voice in terms of the marketing and distribution and whatnot. And the pre-sales have been great to retailers, and hopefully the point of sale system numbers will be great when it opens up next week. So please pre-order. That helps as much as possible. The other side is so there's the physical aspect of doing it, but then sometimes there's books that you just want to release yourself because of those things that you're talking about. I do want to pick out some of those aspects, and I think it matters how things are laid out and what the text is and all of that, that I didn't really want to compromise. And so, for example, I have a new type of book that is an adult, and I would love to do a line of these, an adult picture book on emotions. Because when I'm in front of a children's table and everybody's reading my social emotional I feel books, they're like, I wish we had books like this as a kid, or I wish there were some books like that for adults. So I made one. And it's very adult, so it's definitely like R rated up there. So mixing that with children's, you got to be careful with it. And I just wanted a little bit of control to make sure that I do it very tastefully and in the right way. So that was an option as well. So I just like to keep myself to options. I have, as you mentioned, we have an agent, so she's still pitching. They're wonderful.
That was my next question.
Yeah,
So, I mean, I know that I need an agent. I could never have had the success I've had in the past 2 years without our wonderful agents. But everything you talked about now is self-made David Jeremy. Um, Come on, man. So what happened? How did you find the agents? And I know that they're not negotiating with you to sell you the rights to your book.
right, right. Yeah, and as you know, our agents are wonderful, and I would hate to be on the other end of the table with our agents because they
No,
are
no,
really.
don't say that, DJ, because publishers are listening.
Well, my point is that they're extremely knowledgeable, and and so I like the amount of knowledge that they have. Is I would, even if I was negotiating with them, I would just be learning from them, and so I would be a terrible negotiator in that aspect of it.
How did you find them, or did they find you?
So I wow, okay, interesting story again. I queried a bunch of agents a long time ago and got nowhere for years, and that's a very common story, right? And I was rejected by one, but she gave me such amazing feedback. And I said, "Listen, thank you so much for the gift of the time that you took to do this. Like, if you wouldn't mind, I know you said no on representation, but maybe every couple months I could just write you something or check in with you and just learn from you a little bit and just stay that." Oh, and she's like, "I would love that." So once I got the deal with Source Books, I reached out to her and I said, "Would you represent me?" And she said, "Yeah, absolutely, great." Um, so I had an agent at that point. She at that point was looking to kind of so after about a year or two, she just was kind of winding down and she only wanted to represent a couple people. So I needed a new agent, and so I reached out to my editor and said, "Do you have any at Source Books?" And I said, "Do you have anybody you recommend?" And
Wow.
she gave me a list of a couple people. And I think because it comes from an editor, like people are very responsive. Um, and uh, and here's the cool thing: like when I chose Liza, and they chose me because it was a mutual decision. Um, I had three offers. I mean, I went from like no offers of anything to three offers, and most likely it was because it came from an editor, and they have good relationships and all that. So talking to Liza at the time, like it was just a really great fit. She was really passionate about it. Her knowledge was amazing. I do like how direct she is. I'm a big fan of just give me the feedback, tell me what I need to do to be successful. And she allowed me a little bit of leeway to go back and forth with her a little bit, and so she was a great listener. But she's also, they're also very, very knowledgeable, which is why I would be afraid to be on the other side of the table because they know their stuff.
Okay, great. So we didn't talk about your illustrating career. A few sentences because we're running out of time, and I still
Yep.
want you to give some advice to aspiring authors.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So illustrating. So I was sick one day, and I wrote the poem that ended up becoming my I Feel book, the first one. I was sick at home. I wrote this poem, and I had an iPad, and I'm like, man, if I get an illustrator for something, it's just shapes and eyebrows. Like I could really, and faces. I'm like, I could probably do this without having to like pay another illustrator to do it and go through the whole hustle of all that stuff. And so I actually just drew it on my iPad. The iPad's very forgiving, so it's a good way to kind of like get started. And so I started with really simple things like that, and I really noticed the nuances of just little things like your eyebrows up or whatnot. And those nuances help kids that have an issue with or that struggle with seeing facial recognition. So it started being used that way, and I just thought it was kind of cool. And I love creating, so I just started being tactile, and I eventually got on pen and paper. I would talk to Dan, and he'd give me tips and all that kind of fun stuff. And
This is another adult thing. This isn't something you've been doodling since you were four.
oh no, 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 no! I didn't start writing until later. Yeah, or start drawing until after I wrote books.
So I
Yeah.
mean, I don't want to ask you how old you are now, but I mean, like 10 years from now, you might decide to be a molecular biologist.
Well, it, I might. Yes, that is a possibility of things. But for me, there are 100 things, a million things I can't do.
Are you now in your niche? This is where DJ wanted to be, didn't even realize it, but
Yeah.
found his true home in picture books.
I hope so. That's where my heart is. That's where I want to contribute. I love connecting with kids that way. It's funny you say that because of all the things we just talked about, Mel. Like you can't, Steve Jobs famously once said, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking back. And I think that's really true. Everybody's got a wonderful story, and I encourage everybody to learn those dots of other people. Because that's like it's such a interesting thing because people will always tell you what things should be. You should do this. You should get an agent. You should be a publisher. You should wait. You should query. You should do all these things. And yeah, there's some professionalism involved in all that, but should doesn't equal could. Other things could happen. And if you're not open to seeing those things, you may not take advantage of those. And so I wanted to illustrate. And so I just tried,
So
you
you just
know,
did.
yeah, so I just did, and I don't illustrate things I can't. You can't. Somebody comes up to me and says, "Draw Superman." I can't do that. I don't know how to do that, but I can draw like a really fun creature or a really fun, kind of whimsical. Like I like whimsy and joy. When I do art fest and I sell my art like as original artwork, the greatest compliments I get is when people walk in, they smile and they go, "This tent makes me happy." And I was like, "Oh, like because that's what I draw. That's what I love." And so, I it's a secondary part of my career in terms of author,
DJ,
but
you're a crowd pleaser. You're a crowd pleaser.
yeah,
Whether it's the kids you're teaching, the people in the theater where you're showing off with your unicycle practice, your beautiful books. Um, I think it's wonderful. So before we go, two things. First of all, I want you to open your brand new book and read a little bit.
yeah, sure.
I
Thank you.
mean, I don't want the publisher to get angry with me, but
The
you can
publisher to get angry with you. Yeah. Hold on, let me ask permission.
yeah, you can read a page or two.
Yeah, let's read a couple. Goes, she had a plan. It was a good plan. At least it started that way. She had a friend who needed help. So of course she gave them a yes. They were her friend. I'll take you through the climax. It was a big yes. I can spare it, she thought. Her plan changed a little bit. She felt good that she helped a friend, right? Which we all do. The next day, that friend told their friend how helpful the girl was. So she asked the girl for help too. Always wanting to be kind, she offered him a yes as well. Her plan changed, but she dealt with it. Word got around quickly. The girl suddenly made more and more friends who all lined up for her incredible yeses. Big yeses, little yeses, unusual yeses. She gave a yes to as many friends who needed one. Yes, 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 yes. Giving away her yeses took a lot of work and a lot of time. They became less and less helpful, and her new friends stopped coming by. She wondered if they were ever her friends at all. Here's where it hits you. She got sad. Not only were her yeses not helpful anymore, but her plan was gone. And this is the page that to me really hits home. It was
She hit yes bottom.
yeah, she hit yes bottom. Brilliant. She was exhausted. She had no more yeses for her friends. She had no more yeses at all. She was empty, and she didn't feel like herself anymore.
Beautiful. Save a double spread for the people who should go out and buy this beautiful book.
This part?
Yes. No, no, I'm saying yes. No, go ahead and buy it. We don't want to give everything away.
Yeah.
DJ, one or two pieces of advice for aspiring, I would say aspiring authors, but maybe aspiring anybody in your case.
Yeah. I would give two things. One is about other people, and one is about yourself. Um, the uh, the part about other people is that use any of those no's as as a launching point. Stay connected. When somebody like the example was about the agent. Like I've done that. That's how I got my current job, my current corporate job, is I got denied another job when I interviewed 2 years ago, and I really enjoyed the conversation with the person that turned me down. And I said, "Hey, can we stay connected? Like I just loved our conversation." And we did. And lo and behold, he's my current boss right now. Right? So you never know. So always leave a situation open, and those doors are never closed, and always try to stay connected to those people as well, because it may not be no, it just might not be right now. And even though it stings, it does. But the other part is what I'm hinting at is kind of the lesson of a thousand no's, which is I'll say it real quick, briefly, and then explain it. Is don't let your perception. I'm sorry. Don't let your expectations get in the way of your perception, which is what I was talking to earlier. Don't let your expectations of how something should be. You should do this. You should get an agent. You should hear back from them a certain amount of time. You should be making this amount of money by the time you're this, whatever it is, because you're getting those expectations, you're only seeing that, and your perception is off, and so you can't discover what could be. And so I really encourage you to take people's advice that way, even if you disagree with it, and just think about, why are they saying this? Am I missing something? Is it something that I just have, this is how I think it should be, so I'm not open to this? Um, a great example of that is color in A Thousand No's. I didn't want to put color in the book, and I kind of went back and forth with them until I realized that uh, that I wasn't listening to the experts, and I said, you know what, they know a lot. Let me take a risk, because I think it should be this, but I'm getting in the way of what it could be. And the color, the addition to how it adds color over time, is something that everybody comments about, and I think it's brilliant. And I was so happy to be so wrong about that, and very glad that I had a team at Sourcebooks that kind of pushed back on it. They gave me grace where I couldn't, where I wanted to do something, but they were very thoughtful about this, and they were right.
This is why I think that you need a traditional publisher,
Hmm.
because all these years that I was self-published, I wasn't listening to anybody.
Yeah.
And when you get a traditional deal, you kind of have to listen. Listen, DJ, this has been wonderful. We could go on and on. Hold up your beautiful book, A Million Yeses, a wonderful book, well worth running out and purchase, but you can run out and purchase it very easily these
Yeah.
days.
And a quick side note, if anybody has any concerns or issues about the use of the apostrophe, on my website, dj.com, there's a whole article about why we choose to use apostrophe yes on A Thousand No's and A Million Yeses. So any of the grammar police out there, I get weekly emails. Just know that it's thoughtful and strategic.
Okay, and illustrated by Dan Dougherty
Yep.
brilliantly.
Yes.
And give him my best. I'd like to meet him someday also.
Well,
And DJ, this has been wonderful. So great that you were up for a almost spontaneous interview.
yeah.
And I will just sign off by saying that I'm Mel Rosenberg, and I'm the host of the Children's Literature Channel of the New Books Network, and I've been celebrating a brand new book with the wonderful DJ Corchin. DJ, thanks. We're going to send everybody out to buy your book. We're going to go back and come back and share a few thoughts. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mel. Bye.